Hi, this is Lit with Chris, and in this video I'll be talking about how to start planning an IBDP extended essay in English A literature. This video will be useful to you if you want to do an extended essay in literature but are not sure which text or texts to make the basis of your essay. But before we get started on how to actually choose the text, let's look at the two categories that you have to choose from when doing an EE in literature. Category 1 essays are a study of one or more literary works originally written in English. This means reading, researching, and evaluating individual novels, plays, or poetry collections. Alternatively, you can choose to compare and/or contrast one text with another, provided they were both originally published in English. Category 2 essays study a literary work originally written in English with one or more literary works originally written in another language. This means selecting a novel, play, or poetry collection in English and comparing or contrasting this with another text in any other language than English. Whether you want to work on individual texts or compare and contrast them, the most challenging part of this process can often be choosing the novel, play, or poetry that the essay will actually be based on. For a bit of helpful guidance when making the selection, we can look at the 2021 Examiner's Report for the extended essay in English A literature. The Examiner report commented that popular authors and texts continue to be recycled. Atwood, Orwell, Huxley, Scott Fitzgerald, and indeed anything dystopian, which some candidates struggle to use purposefully. They add that a range of literature was selected, though with an over-reliance on white Western authors, Wilde and Tolkien in particular this year. They suggest that writers such as Ada Limon, Rupi Kaur, or texts such as 448 Psychosis generate strong work and help students move beyond the conventional focus on Miller and Shakespeare. This might suggest that moving away from the more well-known, widely written about white writers may be a good starting point to consider when selecting a text. However, how do we go about finding a text or a writer that is not as widely known, not as widely written about, and still represents a diverse voice, whilst also being able to be seen as a literary work worthy of study? Other than asking teachers, librarians, or parents, one of the best ways to discover fresh, new literary works is to consult one of the world's many international literary prizes. Here are some of the well-renowned organisations you may or may not have heard of. In the UK, there is the Women's Prize for Fiction, the International Booker Prize, the Booker Prize, and the Costa Book Awards. The US has the Pulitzer Prize and the National Book Awards. Indian writers compete for the Hindu Literary Prize and the Sahitya Academy Award, whereas Australia and South Africa have the Australian Book Industry Awards and the South African Literary Awards, respectively. This is not an exhaustive list, and there are certainly more within these countries and in other countries that use English as an official language. But if you're interested in finding a novel or novella to study, then any of these awards will provide you with plenty of potential suggestions. Some of the organisations not only give out awards for novels, but also plays, poetry, and non-fiction. However, if you are more interested in the likes of plays or poetry, you may need to seek out awards such as the Tony Awards or the Laurence Olivier Awards for drama, the Forward Prize for poetry, or the Griffin Poetry Prize. Take some time to look through the websites for these awards or their Wikipedia pages. Then, read the book summaries for both winners and nominees to get a sense for whether you'd be interested to read and write 4,000 words about one of them. However, whilst doing your searching, it's really important to remember that you keep in mind that if you do find a book and like the sound of it, and it has been translated into English, this will fall into category 2 and require you to choose another text originally written in English to compare and contrast it with. The ideal approach to an extended essay in literature is to find, analyse and engage with a text in a unique way. We also need to be wary when using texts that have won major literary awards in the last few years. Although the IB does stress the importance of students using their own analysis and evaluation in regard to the primary text, there is also the requirement to bring in secondary research that has helped to inform your opinion about the text you have chosen.
This becomes problematic with more recent winners of major prizes. If we take the winner of the International Booker Prize for 2022, Tomb of Sand, a search on JSTOR yields no results. Whilst there are more on Google Scholar, these are not typically reliable sources you are expected to use to inform your analysis in the essay. Both of these databases are good examples of where high-quality secondary resources can be found, as opposed to online newspapers, online magazines, or revision websites.
Despite this, if you go back a few years for the same prize, in this case 2016, and search for Han Kang's The Vegetarian, both JSTOR and Google Scholar offer multiple articles that may match up with or inspire the analytical focus you use for the extended essay. The same is also the case if we take the 2009 winner of the Pulitzer Prize for Drama, Lynn Nottage's Ruined. There are plenty of articles to be found on reputable databases such as JSTOR or Google Scholar. So before hopping on to any good or evil online bookstores, make sure that the text that you like the look of has a sufficient amount of secondary research. Once again, teachers, librarians and parents remain very good options for recommendations when it comes to finding literary texts outside the more obvious classics. Indeed, most school or city libraries will stock the winners of the literary competitions that are featured in this video for you to have a look at. Researching and selecting one of the winners or nominees from one of the many awards mentioned in this video might mean that you get access to a text that ultimately goes on to become a classic in 10 to 20 years' time. The key starting point is choosing a text that you are going to be committed to reading, discussing, evaluating, and ultimately writing 4,000 words about in the next 12 months.